The classroom door slammed shut, and Jamal froze, his pencil hovering over a half-finished sketch of a vibrant cityscape. Laughter erupted from the back row, sharp and cutting, as Marcus, the class bully, snatched the notebook from his desk. "What's this, Picasso? You think these doodles are gonna get you out of this dump?" The other kids snickered, their eyes darting between Jamal's flushed face and the crumpled page Marcus waved like a trophy. The teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, barely looked up from her grading. "Jamal, focus on math, not your little drawings," she said, her voice tired, dismissive. The bell rang, and Jamal grabbed his notebook, shoving it into his worn backpack. He didn't cry, not anymore, but the sting of their words clung to him like damp clothes. That night, alone in his cramped bedroom, he drew until his fingers ached, pouring his dreams into every line. Years later, those same doodles would hang in the office of the President of the United States, a testament to a boy who never stopped believing. If this story grabs you, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? Let's see how far this story travels. Jamal Carter was 16, skinny and quiet, the kind of kid who faded into the background of Jefferson High, a crumbling school in East Cleveland where the heat rarely worked, and the chalkboards were more cracks than slate. His mom worked double shifts at the hospital, and his older brother, Ty, was always out, chasing quick money in ways Jamal didn't ask about. Drawing was his escape, his way of making sense of a world that felt too heavy. In class, while others whispered or slept, Jamal sketched faces, buildings, dreams of places he'd never been. But every stroke of his pencil seemed to invite trouble. Teachers called it a distraction. Classmates called it a joke. "You ain't no artist, Jamal," Marcus would taunt, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "You just wasting paper." Jamal never argued back. He'd just grip his pencil tighter, letting the lines speak for him. One day, during lunch, he sat alone in the courtyard, sketching a mural of kids playing under a bright sky. A shadow fell over his page. M's. Carter, the new art teacher, her glasses slipping down her nose. "That's beautiful," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Why do you hide it?" Jamal shrugged, unsure how to answer someone who actually saw him. The mocked dreamer Jamal's days at Jefferson High were a blur of gray hallways and sharp words. He carried his sketchbook everywhere, its edges worn from being shoved into his backpack to avoid Marcus's pranks. In algebra, he'd sketch in the margins of his notebook, turning equations into swirling patterns of faces and cities. Mrs. Reynolds caught him once, her sigh heavy with exasperation. "Jamal, this isn't art class. You're failing my quizzes." The class laughed, and Marcus leaned over, whispering, "Keep drawing, man. Maybe you'll sketch yourself a new life." Jamal's cheeks burned, but he kept his head down. At home, things weren't much better. His mom, exhausted from her shifts, would glance at his sketches and say, "They're nice, baby, but focus on school. Art don't pay bills." Ty was worse, scoffing at Jamal's dreams. "You think you're gonna be famous? This ain't no movie." But late at night, when the apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the radiator, Jamal drew. His sketches were alive. Vibrant markets, kids dancing in the streets, a world where no one laughed at dreams. One afternoon, Miss Carter stopped him in the hall. "There's an art contest at the community center," she said, handing him a flyer. "Your work belongs there." Jamal stared at the paper, his heart racing. Could he really show his art to the world? A spark of hope. The community center smelled of old coffee and paint, its walls covered in faded posters. Jamal hesitated at the door, the contest flyer crumpled in his pocket. Miss Carter was inside, setting up easels for the event. "Jamal, you made it," she said, her smile warm. She led him to a table piled with art supplies, real ones, not the stubby pencils he was used to. "Show me what you've got." Jamal pulled out his sketchbook, his hands trembling. Miss Carter studied his work, her eyes lingering on a drawing of his mom laughing, her face glowing in a way he hadn't seen in years. "This is special," she said. "You see people, Jamal. That's a gift." For the first time he felt seen too. But the contest meant putting his work on display, risking more laughter. At school, Marcus caught wind of it. "You entering that art thing?" he sneered, tossing Jamal's backpack into a locker. "Good luck, loser." Jamal's stomach churned, but Miss Carter's words echoed in his mind. That night, he stayed up late, working on a new piece, a mural of his neighborhood, not as it was, but as it could be, with bright colors and smiling faces. He didn't know if he'd win, but he wanted to try. Facing the doubters, Jamal spent weeks on his contest piece, sketching in the dim light of his bedroom. He poured everything into it, his hopes, his fears, the beauty he saw in a world that didn't always see him, but doubt crept in. At school, Marcus and his friends mocked him relentlessly. "You think some crayon's gonna make you famous?" they jeered. Even his mom, though kinder, worried. "Jamal, you're missing homework for this. Don't throw away your future." Ty was blunt. "Art's for rich kids, not us." Jamal wanted to scream that they were wrong, but part of him wondered if they were right. What if he failed? What if his art was just a childish dream? Miss Carter noticed his hesitation during their after-school sessions. "People will always doubt what they don't understand," she said, adjusting her glasses. "But your art speaks truth. Let it." Her words gave him strength, but the fear lingered. The night before the contest, Jamal stared at his finished piece, a vibrant cityscape where kids like him could dream without fear. He traced the lines, remembering every taunt, every laugh. Then he packed it carefully, his hands steady. He wasn't just drawing for himself anymore. He was drawing for everyone who'd ever been told their dreams didn't matter. The turning point, the community center buzzed with noise on contest day. Kids and parents crowded around displays, their voices a mix of excitement and nerves. Jamal's piece hung near the back, its colors catching the light. He stood beside it, feeling exposed, like his heart was pinned to the wall. Miss Carter gave him a nod, her eyes proud. The judges, local artists and a gallery owner named Ms. Elena, moved through the room, pausing at each entry. When they reached Jamal's, Ms. Elena lingered, her brow furrowed. "Who did this?" she asked. Jamal's voice cracked as he answered, "Me." She studied him, then the painting. "This is remarkable. It feels alive." The room went quiet as the winners were announced. Third place, second place. Then, first place, Jamal Carter. The crowd clapped, but Marcus, in the back, snorted loudly. Jamal's chest tightened, but Ms. Elena approached him after. "I'm submitting this to a national youth art competition," she said. "Your work deserves more eyes." Jamal blinked, stunned. That night, he lay awake, his mind racing. His art wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a door opening to something bigger. Rising above the national competition meant traveling to Chicago, a city Jamal had only seen in his sketches. But the costs, travel, supplies, entry fees, were steep. His mom couldn't afford it, and Ty just shook his head. "You're chasing fairy tales, man." Jamal felt the weight of their doubt, but Ms. Carter rallied the community center to fundraise. Neighbors donated what they could, $5 here, $10 there. Even Mrs. Reynolds, his math teacher, slipped him a $20, muttering, "Don't tell anyone." In Chicago, Jamal faced artists from across the country, many from wealthier schools with fancy portfolios. He felt out of place, his secondhand jacket stark against their polished looks. But his piece, a new work showing a kid reaching for a star-filled sky, stood out. The judges praised its emotion, its raw honesty. Jamal didn't win, but a curator from a DC gallery approached him. "Your art tells stories we need to hear," she said. "Keep going." Back home, the neighborhood started to change. Kids who once mocked him asked to see his sketches. Marcus stayed quiet, his taunts fading. Jamal felt a shift. He wasn't just a dreamer anymore. He was someone who could inspire. The unexpected call. Months later, Jamal was sketching in the community center when Ms. Carter burst in, her face lit with excitement. "Jamal, you need to see this." She handed him a letter from the White House. His Chicago piece had been selected for a youth art exhibition in Washington, D.C., with a chance to be displayed in the president's office. Jamal's hands shook as he read. "This can't be real," he whispered. His mom cried when he told her, her voice thick with pride. "I was wrong, baby. Your art is your future." The trip to D.C. was surreal. Jamal, in a borrowed suit, stood in a gallery surrounded by politicians and artists. He felt like an imposter until the curator introduced him to the crowd. "This young man's work captures hope," she said. Jamal's painting, a vibrant scene of his neighborhood reborn, hung proudly. A White House aide approached afterward. "The president wants this in his office," she said. Jamal nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. As he boarded the bus home, he sketched the moment, the gallery, the lights, the feeling of being seen. For the first time, he believed his art could change the world. A legacy of art back in East Cleveland, Jamal's return was quiet but powerful. The neighborhood buzzed with pride. His painting in the president's office was proof that dreams could break through. Jamal didn't let it go to his head. He started an art program at the community center, teaching kids to draw their own stories. Marcus showed up one day, hesitant, holding a crumpled sketch. "Can you teach me?" he asked. Jamal nodded, no grudge in his heart. His mom watched, her smile brighter than he'd ever seen. The school's walls, once bare, now displayed murals. Jamal's designs, painted by his students. At a community event, Ms. Carter spoke to the crowd. "Jamal showed us that art isn't just lines on paper. It's courage. It's hope." Jamal stood beside her, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. He thought of the boy who'd once hidden his drawings, afraid of laughter. That boy was gone. In his place was an artist whose work had reached the highest halls, proving that kindness to oneself and perseverance could rewrite any story. As the crowd clapped, Jamal smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. On